All right, guys, let's cut to the chase. Gary, you have acquired fame in some eyes and infamy in other eyes, and you are going to be forever linked with Paul Pierce. How's life been for you? How much direct, confrontation, feedback have you gotten since we had that fun little draft?
You have to explain this, Bob. You have to set it up with the draft.
In America, the Boston Globe, Alan Himmelsbach of the Globe, come up with an idea that we would get together 5 people who have had an association covering the Celtics, starting with myself. My time period goes back to 1969, and that we would have a fantasy draft of among the all-time Celtic rosters back to 1946. The only stipulation being you had to spend at least one full season with the team. So no Pistol Pete Maravich, no Shaq, if you were so inclined. And we had a draft, and they had a fantasy draft, and we had a lottery to go with the order. And Gary had the first pick by that lottery. And Gary chose, to the surprise of many people, Paul Pierce. So you're on the defense stand now, Gary Washburn. I know. So tell us about what went through your mind.
Well, it's a fantasy draft, okay? It's not an all-time great player draft. That's Russell. It's not a championships draft. That's Russell. It's not a human rights draft. That's Russell. It's not the best Celtic of all time draft. That's Russell. It's a fantasy draft. You're putting up numbers. You want the team, like I told your cohort Dan Shaughnessy this. If you have a fantasy football draft, you'd be dumb to take Tom Brady as your first quarterback. Nobody does. Even though he's the best winner in sports, he's the greatest quarterback of all time. He's the 7th, 6th quarterback taken because he doesn't put up the eye-popping numbers. It's a fantasy draft. Pierce, second all-time leading scorer, all-time Celtic three-point leader, 7th in rebounds. I put up the player who's going to put up the most numbers, who has a transcendent game, who would have been able to play in the 50s, 60s, and 70s because of his size, his girth, his mid-range game. It's not the greatest Celtic of all time. I do not think Paul Pierce is the greatest Celtic of all time. Now, Bird is a great argument. I could have easily taken Larry Bird and probably could have, maybe should have. But people are like, I'm choosing Pierce as the greatest. It's not who's your greatest Celtic team of all time. It's a fantasy team. So I'm putting up numbers. So my team is Pierce, Jayson Tatum, Isaiah Thomas, Dennis Johnson, and Perk as my starting 5. So those aren't the greatest Celtics, as I told Shaughnessy. If we're doing greatest teams, I should have just said, okay, Bob, I'm taking a 65 team, whoever the hell, because they've won 5 in a row. Like, let's take the 65 team and match them up against the 86 team, the 08 team, the 74 team, and the 76 team. If that's what we're doing, but we're not. It's a fantasy draft. So I wish people would stop saying that I think Pierce is a better player than Bill Russell. Fantasy-wise, yes, you would choose Peyton Manning over Brady because Peyton puts up more numbers. Brady's a better winner.
I understand what you're trying to say, but the idea is to win, right? I thought I approached this myself, and the idea we're having a tournament.
We're putting together.
I want the team. I'm trying to win.
Yeah.
And
this is 2 different things, though. You guys are talking 2 different things, right?
We are,
Gary
obviously.
Washburn
We approached it 2 different ways.
He's talking about fantasy. He's talking about fantasy basketball, where Bob Ryan's talking about 5 guys that would win on the court, right? That's the difference here. Is I don't think it was clear when Adam maybe it was.
That's the way I understood it, that you're trying to win.
Yeah, I'm trying to win, but I'm not saying that Russell wouldn't help you win, but I'm putting up the second all-time scorer. Like, Bob, I have a question. What if I had taken Havlicek first? What would have been the reaction?
It wouldn't have been as overwhelmingly negative as Pierce. But I think 99% of people.
Why?
Well, wait a minute. I think 99% of people would have taken either Russell or Bird.
Yes.
Period. And then draw a line. Why? Because Havlicek, I saw them both. John Havlicek's better than Paul Pierce, in my opinion, period. And I agree with that. Paul Pierce, by the way, the Celtic Rushmore is, in terms of historical presence and achievement, is so clear, there's no argument, shouldn't be any argument that it's Russell, Cousy, Bird, and Havlicek. The question then, who's the next guy up? And I've had this discussion. It's either Pierce or it's McHale. And that's how much I think of Pierce. That's a hell of a compliment. But he's not. But so to answer your question, I don't think you would have been crucified as much by taking John Havlicek as taking Paul Pierce. By the way, I agree with you, and you said something. You hit on something that has been one of my great arguments for Pierce in general terms. There are two guys in our time, our recent times, Garrett, that I think would have been equally at home in the 50s and the 2000s. Those two guys are Paul Pierce and Manu Ginobili. They each have old guy games with three-point capability, and they would have been perfectly at home in 1955 or 1960 as much as they are in 2020. You're absolutely correct 100% in your evaluation of Pierce's unique, skill set and approach to the game. Totally agree.
I think, and I said this before Jayson Tatum played a game, I think he will be better than Pierce. I think he will eventually have a chance to be on that Mount Rushmore that you announced of Celtics players, Bob. I really do.
Well, but all right, But
I know it's early. I get it's early. All I'm saying is
it
was fun. But yeah, you did shock us, Gary. I can tell you that.
And there's arguments against me. I'm not denying any arguments, but as I told Shaughnessy, it was like I took John Bagley first. Let's get like I took the franchise's second all-time leading scorer, and I'm getting, you don't know basketball. Like, I'm sorry. And if I had taken the first one, I would have been just crucified. So I get it. Russell is a transcendent figure in American culture, not only sports, just, yes, if it's a human rights, if it's a championships, we're going fantasy basketball. We're putting my team against your team. I took more contemporary players. So no offense, I'll take my chances if Tom Heinsohn has to guard Jayson Tatum. I think I'll be okay. The oldest guy I took was Silas because Silas can rebound. And Charlie Scott. No one talked about Charlie Scott. Great player.
Wait till Heinsohn drops a 15-foot corner hook on Tatum. His mouth will fall open.